Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to talk about Megan Rapinoe and the legacy that she leaves behind in women's football as she's about to retire. So she really gained prominence at the 2012 London Olympics, where the US took home the gold medal. She's been described as one of the pioneering openly gay football players. She once told Time magazine, "For the longest time, I was the only player who was out." And she appeared in the 2012 July edition of Out magazine. So from the very beginning, she began presenting herself as an activist for LGBTQ rights, and her sexuality essentially became part of her identity as a sporting personality. Now, we've seen other gay athletes who haven't made their sexuality part of their identity throughout the years. The focus was simply on the sports that they were doing. The focus was simply on their athletic ability and their victories. But in 2016 is when she really started taking her activism up a notch or two, inspired by Colin Kaepernick, who began taking the knee in the same year. So in 2016, Colin Kaepernick began taking the knee, or at least sitting down during the playing of the national anthem. The first time he did it publicly was at the NFL preseason game with the San Francisco 49ers and the Green Bay Packers. But apparently he had began his protests at other games prior to this. And this was in August in 2016. So in September the following month, Megan took the knee at a Chicago Red Stars versus Seattle Reign match. To avoid any controversy at later matches, they began playing the national anthem before the plays even came out. She was also known as the first white female player to take a knee in support of Colin Kaepernick and what he was doing. She later wrote an essay in the Players' Tribune titled, "Why I'm Kneeling." "I have chosen to kneel because I simply cannot stand for the kind of oppression this country is allowing against its own people. I have chosen to kneel because, in the words of Emma Lazarus, until we are all free, we are none of us free. But this is about more than just raising awareness."
It's just so frustrating that the conversation is going that way. People are so quick to criticize me or judge me or, question my intentions, and not willing in any way to talk about what we're talking about. And it's difficult. It's a hard issue to talk about. It affects everybody. But why are you not kneeling? And I don't mean kneeling in terms of kneeling. What are you doing? What is everyone doing to help? Because everyone knows that we have a problem in this country. Everyone knows that we have serious issues to talk around racial injustice. And it's all this bullshit about the flag and about respect and about this. And is it the perfect form of protest? I don't know. Is there ever one? No.
In 2017, the US Soccer Federation passed a policy declaring that players must stand respectfully during the national anthem before national team games. And in 2019, the US women's national team prepared for the World Cup that was going to take place in France. And of course, Megan was asked, "Are you going to take the knee?" She said, "I'll probably never put my hand over my heart. I'll probably never sing the national anthem again. I feel like it's kind of defiance, in and of itself, to just be who I am and wear the jersey and represent it. Because I'm as talented as I am, I get to be here. You don't get to tell me if I can be here or not." She went on to address President Trump, who she obviously wasn't a big fan of. She had an awakening at the 2016 election. I think that's what got her to ramp up her activism.
I just want to play this out that sort of started all of this in the public mind about the White House thing.
I'm not going to the White House. No, I'm not going to the White House. We're not going to be invited.
You're not going to be invited?
I doubt it.
So that was actually shot a while ago, I understand. It was just released at that time. It was shot by some crew. Did you know that it would cause a kerfuffle?
No, I did not know that. And anyone that knows me knows that I use the F word way too much.
You've apologized for cursing in that, not for the statement
itself.
Not
for the statements, yes. I use it way too much and way too loosely. But no, I didn't realize that. And it was more, obviously, it was I think our jersey unveil for the new jersey leading into the World Cup, and it was kind of in a passing moment. But I mean, I meant with all the inflection and all of the sort of attitude that it gave with it. I meant all of it and every word of it.
Now if as far as we know, as far as I know, there is not an invitation from the president to the White House. He had said later on, well, he'd criticized you, but said that win or lose, that he'd said that you should win before you talk, and that win or lose, your team would be invited. There hasn't been an invitation publicly yet. Would you go? Would your teammates go?
I would not go, and every teammate that I've talked to explicitly about it would not go.
Everyone that you've talked to?
Everyone that I've talked to, yeah. I don't think anyone on the team has any interest in lending the platform that we've worked so hard to build, and the things that we fight for, and the way that we live our life. I don't think that we want that to be co-opted or corrupted by this administration.
So it's kind of a good FU to any sort of inequality or bad sentiment that the Trump administration might have towards people who don't look exactly like him, which, God help us if we all look like him. Scary, really scary. Disturbing. And people were questioning, why is she not singing the national anthem? Kind of like today with the women's team, when we look at them, there's a few of them, at least half or over half the team, not singing the national anthem and not putting their hand on their heart. Legacy. So she was trying to honour the US Federation's policy about standing during the national anthem and being respectful, but she didn't sing it, and people were wondering why she wasn't singing. She stood by her decision to not sing the anthem, saying that she was standing up for other people, including people who are unable to stand up for themselves. And she said that attitude in and of itself is uniquely American. I don't think anybody can deny the horrors of racism and Jim Crow and mass incarceration and what's happening on the southern border, and gay rights and women's rights. And there we have another facet of her activism, which is women's rights, in particular, women's rights when it pertains to sports. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is a person who advocates for biological males to compete in women's sports. But Megan Rapinoe is known as an activist who champions the cause of equal pay when it comes to women's sports. So she cares about fairness for female athletes, fairness for women competing at a professional level. She wants them to be treated on the same level as the male athletes. But apparently now she's okay with males infringing upon women's sports. She's okay with them competing against biological females. She's okay with them, along with their unfair advantage, participating in women's sports, and then all the other things that come with that. But over the years, before we got to where we are now, she has been the face of equal pay for women's soccer. So in 2019, a court case was filed by members of the US women's national team against the US Soccer Federation. Court papers were revealed that showed some of the arguments the US Soccer Federation made, and it was unflattering towards the women's team. One of the arguments made was that the US women's team were less skilled than the men's. It was also claimed that women's soccer was less demanding. Court papers said, quote, "The job of a men's national team player carries more responsibility within US soccer than the job of a women's national team player." They said that the men's team are usually under more pressure. The fans of the men's team are usually more hostile, so they have to deal with more hostility. And sometimes, they receive a lot more criticism when they don't qualify for the World Cup, for example. Sometimes when they go to home games, the Mexican players have more fans than the US players on US soil. It was said that the men's just simply have a different job. It can't be compared to the women's team. And obviously, male soccer players here in the US don't get paid anywhere near what Premiership footballers get paid, or, footballers across Europe get paid. There's no comparison because they are paid in proportion to what they bring in. And soccer is big here, but it's nowhere near as big as basketball, NFL, baseball, so there's no comparison to what they get paid compared to what they get paid in Europe.
The best part of this Megan Rapinoe interview is that she was asked how fans can support the fight for equal pay. Her answer is just incredible.
In the moments immediately following the final whistle, you get that USA, USA chant, but equal pay along that same cadence.
Yeah.
I think fans want to know what they can do to support that fight.
Fans can come to games. Obviously, the national team games will be a hot ticket, but we have 9 teams in the NWSL. You can go to your league games. You can support that way. You can, buy players' jerseys. You can lend your support in that way. You can tell your friends about it. You can become season ticket holders. I think in terms of that, that's the easiest way for fans to get involved.
Oh, you mean that fans can actually create the economic incentives for you to get paid more? You mean that capitalism can actually raise your pay? So what you're saying is that the reason you're not getting equal pay right now is because you're not making equal money for your league. And the best way for you to raise your pay would be for people to come and purchase tickets and memorabilia from your team, which suggests that this isn't about sexism at all. This is about you just complaining about sexism for publicity.
In protest to these remarks that came out in court, the women's team wore their jerseys inside out at a match in Japan. They said that the relationship between the US Soccer Federation and the US women's national team had irrevocably broken down. The women initially asked for $66.7 million in back payment. They had a few setbacks in this court case, as a lot of their claims were denied initially. But just last year, they were finally awarded $24 million.
After years of unprecedented success on the global stage, this morning, a victory for the U.S. women's soccer team off the field. A gender pay gap has been at the crux of a long-running legal dispute between U.S. soccer and its players. Those demands now met with an historic agreement. According to the players, the federation will pay $22 million to the athletes, plus another $2 million for post-career goals and charitable efforts, as long as the team's next contract is ratified. In a joint statement, U.S. soccer and the players acknowledging getting to this day has not been easy. Back in 2016, 5 of the game's best players filed a wage discrimination complaint with the EEOC, catapulting the team as champions for equal pay rights.
We continue to be told we should be grateful just to have the opportunity to play professional soccer and to get paid for doing it.
3 years later, they raised the bar. 28 members of the women's soccer team alleging they were paid less than a third of their male counterparts in bonuses, writing, "This is true even though their performance has been superior to that of the male players."
We've filled stadiums, we've broken viewing records, and yet despite all of this, we're still paid less than our male counterparts.
Their efforts splashed across social media campaigns, protests, and an HBO documentary.
It is time. It is time. It is time.
In a major blow to their pursuit for change, a federal judge tossed out the majority of the players' gender discrimination lawsuit in 2020, siding with U.S. Soccer, who said they were actually paid more in total compensation than their male counterparts. The athletes' lawyers appealing the decision, arguing the women significantly outperformed the men who have yet to win a World Cup. That appeal now suspended with today's agreement. The clash over compensation playing out across other sports as well, as soccer federations in more countries commit to equalizing pay.
And I think we've really become a lightning rod and a voice for so many women around the country who deal with gender discrimination.
And the activism hasn't stopped, and it has been led by Megan Rapinoe. She has been the ringleader throughout all of this. Initially, when she began taking the knee, the other women stood and put their hands on their heart and sang the anthem. She was the only one taking the knee. But around 2019, we began to see more of them begin to follow suit. And in 2021, all of them took the knee except for one person. It could have been because of the lawsuit, could have been because of the remarks made by the US Soccer Federation, and more of them began to get involved in the activism as a result. And no doubt the court case brought them closer together, and it showed them that if they took action, they could achieve results. So that might have inspired more and more of them to get involved in speaking out and standing up for what they believe. So at the Olympics, all of them took the knee apart from one person. And this was a year before the conclusion of their groundbreaking court case. The only player who didn't take the knee was Kylie Lloyd, who stood up while everyone else kneeled.
And just seeing these images for the first time right now on the desk, I have never witnessed something like that. There's a difference between being respectful of the fans and saying hello to your family, but to be dancing, to be smiling. I mean, the player of the match was that post. You were lucky to not be going home right now.
Apparently, not only were the players kneeling, but the coaches and staff members were also kneeling. Even 2 referees were seen kneeling. The International Olympic Committee, prior to this, had relaxed their rules on athlete demonstrations, as long as it didn't disrupt the playing of the anthems, as long as it didn't disrupt, the matches in any way or disrupt anyone else, any of the other players, they were allowed to make their point. They were allowed to express themselves. Prior to this, the US players would stand for the anthem, but kneel afterwards as well. So there were a lot of things they did to get around the rules. People often ask, I've even been asked this, even though I'm a US citizen and I live in America, why do people who are from other countries weigh in on US politics? But the fact is, US politics affects the rest of the world. US politics, the decisions made in this country, has a knock-on effect on other countries, especially other Western countries, but even beyond that. The president of the US really is the leader of the free world. And what happened with BLM is a classic example of that. Now, this is an organization, socialist, Marxist organization, who decided to, scam people. But before all of that came out, this was known as an organization who was standing up for black males in particular who had been victimized by the police, who were unarmed and were killed at the hands of police officers. So this was considered a good cause initially. And obviously Black Lives Matter, that's a good name. And everything that went down in 2020 was basically copied in other countries. And I find it ironic that at the last World Cup, we had British footballers kneeling when the American ones weren't. The American ones sang their anthem, got on with it. But then we had other people from other countries kneeling. So the knock-on effect of BLM has affected other countries. And that's just a small example of how what goes on in the US has a knock-on effect. So we're seeing now, fast forward 2023 at the Women's World Cup, members of the US women's national team didn't sing the national anthem. At least half of the team didn't sing or didn't put their hand on their heart, stood there with their hands down by their side and were silent. When you compare this to Vietnam and their team, no comparison. Vietnam sang with passion, with pride, with honor. The US team, quite frankly, many people saw them as an embarrassment. Many people saw what they were doing as ungrateful, as disloyal to the country that afforded you the opportunities that have put you where you are today. Opportunities women in other countries would only dream of getting.
Megan Rapinoe has basically been, since 2016, doing the Colin Kaepernick routine, getting famous off the radical left social justice stuff that she has been pushing. And that's the reason why she's really being celebrated today. Not because she's a terrific soccer player, which she apparently is, but because she is an outspoken lesbian, because she is a very outspoken SJW on so-called equal pay issues, even though, again, she's not really stumping for equal pay. She's stumping for disproportionate pay for women on the basis of media coverage, effectively. And she has become this sort of obnoxious advocate for her position. The reason I call it obnoxious is because, I'm sorry, but if you go to University of Portland on scholarship for women's soccer and then you're whining about this country, shut up. Hey, really, this is a pretty great country when you get to go to college for free, because not only do you kick a ball, you kick a ball in a sport people pretend to care about once every 4 years.
And of course, the actions of Colin and Megan have brought politics into sports. Now, when you go to watch sporting events and you're sitting next to somebody, you're rooting for the same team. You don't know what the person next to you's political affiliations are. You don't know what political party they root for. Usually, you're just rooting for the same team, especially on a national level. You're going there to see your country's team play. They don't bring any politics into it. But unfortunately, it's the athletes who are bringing politics into sports now. And this is going to continue after Megan retires. I feel we're still going to see this happening. Now, even in their subsequent match against the Netherlands, members of the women's team, once again, didn't sing the national anthem. And fans noticed once again. On a national level, fans are usually chanting USA, USA. They're not thinking about politics or, rooting for England if you're a flip-flopper like me. The question is, taking the knee, not singing the anthem, what does it actually achieve? Now, when they went to court, they did achieve something. They got more money. Does it start a conversation? Yeah, certainly. Does it achieve more than that in the long run? I'm still waiting to see that answer. So far, I haven't seen what it has actually achieved other than causing division.
On Sunday, on the 15th anniversary of 9/11, you didn't kneel. You linked arms with your teammates. What was your thinking going into Sunday?
Yeah, I had a lot of conversations. I talked with a few guys on the Seahawks. I thought that was pretty powerful. I think that 9/11 deserves the utmost respect, and while I personally, in my heart, I don't think it's disrespectful to kneel in front of the flag. Otherwise, I never would join. I understand that it's a heavy day.
You have another decision to make. Thursday night, representing the United States, which has not been the case when you're representing your club team. How is that influencing your thinking about Thursday night?
Tremendously. It is different. I understand that. In a way, I think a lot of people feel like it's more inflammatory to protest while wearing that shirt, but I actually feel like it's more American to do that and to represent my country.
So what will you be doing?
I want to ultimately bring as many people to the conversation as possible. So I'm trying to find a way to talk about what I want to talk about and not alienate people. I'm working through that, but I will be doing something.
Megan has been benched during this World Cup. We'll see if she plays, but so far she's been watching from the sidelines. She's been watching, from the bench.
Well, I'm always shocked when I don't play, Steve, of course. No, I mean, I think all of us on the bench, it's like we think we should be on the field as much as the players on the field think that they should be on the field. Every player on the field that starts the game thinks that they should play 90 minutes, and every player who doesn't, who's a sub, thinks that they should be on at some point. That's, not our job to do that. We're always ready, and we always want to stay ready. We know at some point during this tournament, obviously, the bench will be huge. That's a huge asset of ours. A huge reason why we've been so successful with this group, but obviously historically, winning championships in our past. So I think for me, the conversations that I've had with Lacko just in general, when the time is right and, the situation in the game is ready, that I'll be ready. I think I could have helped, but I think Lynn could have helped, and I think Trinity was helping, and I think Soph was helping, and we had chances.
So we will wait and see whether she goes out with a bang or she goes out on the bench. And quite possibly, she's going to go into retirement known as someone who sat on the bench in the latter part of her career. And she's also going to be known as the woman who started all of this, not singing the anthem, not seeming to really like your country. I mean, that's how it comes across. Some people are like, well, they have an option. They don't have to sing the anthem. Yes, they don't have to sing the anthem. But how does it come across? Especially when you compare them to their competitors, like Vietnam. How does it come across? It doesn't come across like you're too pleased with your country. Even though Trump isn't in power anymore, you got what you wanted. So you've gone from being known as a feminist, championing women's sports, and getting them more pay, to now allowing males to come in and dominate. If male athletes come into women's sports across the board, women's sports is over. But for some reason, she doesn't understand that. But she's retiring, so it doesn't affect her anymore. She can go out, being known as an activist on the bench. Kaepernick hasn't played since 2016 and still wants in, even after comparing the NFL to a plantation. Basically comparing the NFL to slavery and NFL players to slaves. Even after all of that, he still wants in. He tried to get in once again and was unsuccessful. And the players who he inspired, the players who took up for him and his cause, they've now come out and said they were affected by this. And the NFL was affected by this, by his protests. It's not necessarily a good thing when you mix politics with business. We've seen what's happened to Bud Light. It's not necessarily a good thing when you mix your activism with your job as an athlete, which really should be your focus, is just doing your job as an athlete and getting your team results. And that's why the NFL aren't interested in him, because they want results. They're a business. Obviously, he's shown himself to be someone who's controversial. He's shown himself to be someone who takes the conversation away from the sport. And that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for results. And why are they going to let somebody in who hasn't played for, 6-7 years, when they have young quarterbacks, up and coming athletes coming on the scene all the time? Why are they gonna now let you in when you've shown yourself to be someone who stirs up trouble? So Terence Garvin recently roasted Colin Kaepernick. And, you know, I'm inclined to believe this is what a lot of NFL players think about him.
Najee Harris was a part of the workout group with Colin Kaepernick. All right. And yeah, he had his workout stuff like that going on. A lot of positive reviews, a lot of positive energy from all of the guys. Don't be like that, bro. Don't be like that. Don't be like that. So I just had to ask, man. I just had to ask. Stop it. Don't be like that.
Come on, man. Bro, the senior prom was like 6 years ago, bro. It's over, bro. It's over, bro. You feel me? You still trying to be the prom queen. It's a wrap.
Why are you like this, bro?
It's
Stop.
a wrap.
I'm trying to
took that money.
Stop. I'm trying to be professional here. I'm trying to be professional, TG. Stop it. Stop it, man. God.
It's the annual. Bro, he pop up this time of year every year. Like, we know you can throw the ball, bro. We see that, bro. It's just nothing to get out of it for them, like, for them owners. Like, you know, I got the mentality where I understand a little bit of their thought. Like, there's no winning there. What if you come in here and do something
That's
crazy?
their thing. They want to win. Yeah. But
what if you come in here and say something crazy?
Well, before you even say something, they know as soon as they bring you in, they're taking a hit. Bottom line is going to take a hit because of just the polarizing element, regardless of where you land on his stance. It's just
I got
like
signs outside my stadium.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it here in Pittsburgh, man.
On top of that, you done showed me you dangerous. Like, you'll get a rally together. Like, no.
He said, "You can't be leading the protest.
You can't be leading the truth.
You're the franchise coach. You can't be leading the protest. I know your mission is pure. What you're asking for, we even respect that. It's just what we are looking for with this business. I get it, man.
It kind of amazes me, and I love it. I respect it. But you led the protest on these boys on their field. Now you're trying to get back on. They're not gonna let you back in.
Right.
You know it.
Because that was hard. Like to do what he did, regardless of, like you said, how you felt about the mission. It's just like what you're doing to the business as a whole. The NFL, bottom line, they did get impacted. And when you talk about you talk about how many players specifically, no player.
Whether you look at it left or right, whether you look at it left or right, you can say whatever you want. People and teams were impacted. I remember I was on the Seahawks. We fell out over that.
Bro, I know you know what it was here in Pittsburgh. Well, you know we had issues here, bro. It got like crazy. Yeah.
Man, these boys not signing up for more issues. Like, they like, man, we already know we're going to get issues. Let's not sign up for issues.
And all we have now are two legacies. You know, Colin is kind of being roasted by other NFL players for him still wanting to be in the NFL, even though you said that they're essentially a glorified plantation. And now Megan is sat on the bench wanting to play, but she doesn't have a choice. She has to sit there until she's called upon. And looking at the legacy that she's left, seeing these young players not singing their own country's national anthem on the world stage, I don't think that's the best legacy. It just takes away from what we're here to do, which is to play football. And as for women's sports and equal pay, I think we have to define what equal pay actually means. What we are really talking about, if we really cared about equality, we would be happy being paid in proportion to what we bring in. But it appears some of these female athletes, they want to be paid beyond what they bring in. And is that really equality? So the clip I'm about to play you is Will Kane giving his thoughts on the whole equal pay situation. And they clipped it. They clipped it to make it sound like he was just speaking the same old narrative, as if to say, you know, men are more popular, no one watches women's sports. But what they didn't play was the full clip where he explains and breaks down what proportional pay means and how that's a true reflection on what is fair and what isn't. So take a look.
So, critics pushing back at them.
I think equal pay is a ridiculous concept in and of itself. Soccer, for better or worse, on the men's side across this globe is much more popular than the women's.
Oh, we get that argument all the time.
So that's where they clipped it. But listen to him explain in full.
Wants to hear or know
tell you why it's like this. Now, there's two things, first of all. When you talk about, as Trevor Scales just laid out, the bonus difference between the men's team and the women's team, between what a winner, if it had been the U.S. men, would get in the World Cup and the women. The women got a pool, or got paid out from a pool of $30 million from the Women's World Cup. The men would draw from a pool of $400 million, okay? $400 million, $30 million. Why is that? It's because the Men's World Cup generates $6 billion in revenue. The Women's World Cup generates $131 million in revenue. If you want to talk about pay disparity, the Women's World Cup players get paid out 20% of the total revenue. The men get paid out 7%. As a percentage point, they are getting much more. The problem is, for anybody desiring equal pay, and by the way, I think equal pay is a ridiculous concept in and of itself. If the women generate more revenue, they should get paid more than the men. Don't strive for getting the same, strive for getting what you're worth. And if you're worth more, then get more. And so what I'm saying to you right now is soccer, for better or worse, on the men's side, across this globe, is much more popular than women's soccer.
The women's game had higher ratings than the men's, though. So what do you say to that?
Charlie, that's in the United States.
That was in the U.S.
And that's comparing a women's World Cup final that featured the United States against a men's World Cup final in the United States that didn't feature the U.S. team. So you're
And look, on the world stage, when the US men's team play, they're playing England, they're playing France, Portugal, Argentina, all these iconic teams, Brazil. You have iconic footballers, world-class footballers. So obviously, when the US men's team are playing against Argentina, for example, that is going to have huge ratings. Not so much with the women's team playing, against the Netherlands or Vietnam or, that's not going to have the same ratings when the men play, because the men are playing on the world stage. Football, soccer is huge in the men's team. So the ratings all over the world are going to be a lot higher. I think he makes a very good point there. So again, where is the oppression? Where is the oppression? But yet you're silent during the national anthem in protest as if you're coming from, a country where you're oppressed.
We're all struggling to try to decide what your legacy is. What do you think your legacy will be?
That's why you have a job. Well, I'm not going to do your job for you. I don't know. I mean, I think, yeah, again, that's what other people want to write about it. I mean, I think for myself, I've always tried to play the game the right way and to go about things the right way. I've always tried to use whatever platform we have, and this platform obviously was built long before I got here, and we just continued to add to it to, grow the game, to make the world a better place, to use our voices to, advocate for more. I think being a women's professional athlete, we sort of know what the injustices are, at least that we have felt. And so I think it makes it easy for us to then be an ally in other ways. I think that's like the real legacy. I think the most important legacy of this team.